Your most recent work experience is the thing that's going to get you your next job. Make a good connection. One job pays $2 more than the other one, doesn't matter. You're a student. Go and get that experience. You're getting paid money for your job. They're not paying you so you can be fulfilled. They're paying you to solve their business problem. Don't forget that. That's a very advanced interview technique. But people that can do it, they're going to have multiple offers with great organizations, and they're going to be the ones calling the shots. Any organization is going to ask, and any hiring managers ask themselves generally three things.
Pretty recently, I had chance to speak with Anand, who has been a technical recruiter for close to 30 plus years. He has seen every single thing there is to know about IT hiring, and we talked about a lot of important topics that he has extensive experience. Things like resume reviews, common mistakes, first time graduates, how can they get jobs, people who are already working, how can they move into senior positions, what does hiring manager thinks about you, what does recruiter thinks about you, why your resume is not getting selected for jobs, resume ghosting, some common mistakes, and some advanced interview techniques that you can incorporate to land your dream job. Honestly, the whole conversation was an absolute blessing for me because I learned a lot of things that I hadn't encountered before. And I genuinely ask every single one of you to listen to the advice being given by Anand. So I hope that you find our conversation useful and entertaining. Can you give me a brief introduction, like what has been your background and how did you become a technical recruiter?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me, Parth. Yeah, so I had gone to school to Brock University in St. Catharines, and I got a business degree with a major in human resources management from the Goodman School of Business. And at that time, this was back in 1996, the internet was new, and I noticed that lots of people were advertising in newspapers saying, "We are looking for," and then computer skills. And I said, who are these people? So I called, and I found out there were these things called uh, recruitment firms or third-party agencies that would hire, interview, and present candidates on behalf of organizations in the hopes of getting them hired. And because I had an HR background, I applied to all these organizations, and I was lucky enough to be hired to a very, very large one. That time it was called Ward Associates. It then merged into Agilon Consulting. And Peter Ward was a pioneer at the time, and many individuals that I worked with at that time in 1996 went on to open up their own agencies. So I kind of fell into it almost by accident. Needed a job, had a human resources background, didn't know anything about IT, but quickly learned and became a fairly strong technical recruiter.
Exactly. And speaking about 1996, so a couple of key observations. Number one, you've seen the entire boom of IT. So you're just right at the beginning and then been there with all the way. That's incredible. And you mentioned like you saw an ad in a newspaper. I'm pretty sure most of the people wouldn't even thinking that, hey, how do you do that? So
There were
interesting.
sections of the newspaper that were 2 sections thick, full of advertisements for computer professionals. Front page, it costs companies tens of thousands of dollars to put these ads in the newspaper. And there wasn't really, the internet wasn't what it was today. We didn't have access to people's resumes online. We had to physically call people, convince them to get their resume, fax it over to us. We'd get resumes mailed to us. We just started with computer systems and emails and internet, but it wasn't really widely adopted. It was a very different time.
Exactly. So now coming to the present, what does a typical day looks like for you as a technical recruiter?
Yeah, so typically us recruiters, we tend to get up a little bit early because we have a lot of resumes to read. So when we advertise for a position, we typically all have some kind of applicant tracking software that helps us to advertise for a position. And the same software will capture individuals who have applied, which include details about who they are, where they live, maybe salary expectations, but certainly their resume. So a typical day would be having to look at all of the jobs that we posted and seeing how many new applicants that we might have, and then setting out some time to read through those dozens, and in some cases, up to thousands of applicants per job. And we need to do that in a very efficient way. So we need to find ways to very quickly scan through a resume and make a decision, is this person interesting enough to proceed forward with or not? And sometimes that can be the biggest part of our day. That could take, typically a recruiter would be able to, in about 15 seconds, decide if a candidate's application might be worth a closer look or not. And then another 40 to 45 seconds to status change that application in a computer system, which sounds fast, but it's not. So that means about a minute per candidate. Imagine if 1,000 people applied to a position. That's 1,000 minutes for one position. And we typically, as an internal recruiter, might have anywhere between 5 and 35 open jobs to look at.
Okay, so 5 to 35 open jobs, about 1,000 applications per job and per minute per application. Crazy numbers. You brushed on something very important over here, that is ATS, application tracking system. um, in my experience and a lot of others I know, all have felt the pain that my resume exactly matches the job description. Why then the resumes might not get selected? This is just
Yeah.
something, yeah.
Absolutely. It could be for a variety of reasons. I will say the candidates are getting very good at understanding that an applicant tracking system might assign a value, a compatibility score to their resume. So they're much more careful than they used to be on making sure the keywords are there. So if you are a Java.NET developer, you better have the words Java and .NET all over your resume, because it'll trick our systems into giving you a higher probability score, which means I might see your resume sooner rather than later.
Okay.
But I'm an older recruiter, so I know that a lot of candidates who have a lot of experience in the industry, they have terrible resumes. It doesn't mean that they're a bad candidate. It just means that they haven't had to create a resume in many years because they've been stably working, or they go from job to job through referrals and never really had to do a good resume. But yeah, definitely when a recruiter sits down and looks at 1,000 candidates, they might choose different ways to sort how they're going to approach their work. They might take the first candidates that applied, they might start to read from the first candidates that applied to the last candidate that applied. They might take the opposite route. They might take the last candidate that applied, because presumably they're going to be available in the marketplace, versus the first candidate applied, who maybe applied a month ago, who probably already has a job now and isn't available. So why bother looking at their resume? Or they may use the ATS's predictive index. Let's just look at all candidates who score 80% probability or above. Or they might use Boolean search. Search for all candidates that have the words A, B, C, D, E, and F in the resume, poop, and then just narrow it down to the top 10, who happen to live in the city that I need them to live in, who happen to have the salary expectations in the range that I want. So it's very difficult for a candidate to be able to outguess how the recruiter is going to approach. But the best approach is make sure your details are on your resume in very clear format. And if you have a chance to get a referral or know somebody within an organization, that is a huge advantage, as you know, Parth. So when I get in my system, it's flagged as a referral. I read those resumes first and action them first, every time.
Exactly. I personally benefited by having many referrals throughout my career. In fact, the current position where you hired me for Cineplex was actually through a referral as well. And so, again, thank you for that. Now, speaking about resumes and skills, thank you for the detailed breakdown on how you view the applications from a recruiter point of view. In terms of when we talk about skills, as in like core in-demand skills, what are some of the most in-demand skills or the roles you see in the current IT job market?
Yeah, I've been thinking about that question, knowing that you were going to ask me that. It's a difficult thing to answer because every major environment has a little bit of a different technology stack. So depending on which organizations I happen to be representing or who are looking, the stack could be different, whether it be, cloud-based or not, and even within the cloud, is it AWS? Is it Azure? Is it GCP? So really, to be able to say here are the technologies that are most valued, very difficult question to answer considering the entirety of the IT marketplace, because it depends on what the customer is looking for. So for example, in the environment that we know best, where you are, it is C#.NET, but it's not regular Java. It is cloud and it is Azure, not GCP. So for the time that I am helping out with the organization that you're with, I'm very focused on the technology stack that I know exists in the environment. If I were to represent or help a different organization, I have to quickly learn that set. So sometimes also, training institutions will quickly ramp up, and if there's a new darling technology, they'll offer those training services. And what ends up happening though is 6 months later, everybody has that certification on their resume. But everybody has that certification on their resume. So how do I find the best one of when everybody has it? So sometimes having a rare skill can be an advantage. If someone still is an assembler developer or use PeopleSoft or Sybase or something that doesn't happen that much anymore, then whichever environment still have them, they will have a huge advantage to get that opportunity because no one else has it. But if that technology disappears, then they're in big trouble. So it's quite a balancing act. That's why I tell individuals, if you have a technology, put it on your resume, even if it's not being used anymore, because you don't know that maybe there's a little kernel of that somewhere in the environment that the recruiter's looking, and that could be the difference between you getting a phone call and not getting a phone call to talk about it.
Thank you so much, because I have personally deleted skills off my resume just to make space for the new and flashy ones. I'll go ahead and update my resume
Put them
first.
back, because
Yeah.
some manager who's my age or older will say, oh, I remember those days. He has that. I could really use that because I'm paying a consulting firm right now to stitch things together. And this guy could probably do it. So I like to recommend on your resume, maybe just do a bit of a technology dump or an environment dump in each one of your work sections. So your work that you did when you just graduated university, however many years ago, just put environment and just blast out the tech in small font if you need to.
Okay.
And then it gets captured. When I do a Boolean search and I want to do C#.net and Sybase, it'll capture it and you'll be the only one that I will see and you'll be my first phone call.
Speaking along the same lines, what are some of the most common resume mistakes that you find? And I want to understand from all perspectives, like what are the mistakes you commonly see with like fresh graduates or someone with slight experience, someone with like higher experience? They could become like huge, but just because they made some resume mistakes.
Yeah. I'll start with the fresh graduates. So fresh graduates are easy to identify because they over index on their education. They put all their courses and the coursework, whatever, but it's pretty easy to see this was not paid work experience. This was coursework. So I suggest to graduates, like, it's pretty easy for me to figure out that you're a new graduate because the dates will show me. And if you hide the dates, I could still detect it because you don't have a lot of work experience. So maybe adjust that a little bit. Co-op terms, you don't need to make it look like it's just a 3-month co-op term, although the dates will say that, or you don't have to put a big, huge, bold co-op internship, whatever. Just focus on what you did for the organization. And students will then put things that may be relatively irrelevant. It flags them as a student. So if they put a lot of their coursework in work experience section or on page 1 of their resume, then that tells me that they don't have any work experience to really talk to, so they're just putting in their coursework. And so does every single person that graduated in that year is the same boat. So how do I differentiate? It becomes a big problem. So that could be an issue. Another general issue with resumes is people put headers and footers. And a lot of times the scraping mechanism on the ATS can't see the header or the footer. So I get a resume, can't read the person's name. I don't have their email address. I don't have their phone number. I can't even contact them because it's not scraped off the header and the footer. Put it in the main body of the email. Don't use headers or footers. Also, resumes get pretty fancy nowadays, but it tricks the ATS systems. When you have a lot of vertical columns, it botches everything up. And I think some candidates will get fatigued applying because the algorithm is trying to scrape the resumes and put it in order of what jobs they had, and it's all over the map, and you've got to redo it, and then you just exit the process. So sometimes simpler is better. And if you're in doubt whether you should keep something in or take it out, you should probably keep it in. But make sure the most recent work experience, so now we're switching to more intermediate to senior level individuals, your most recent work experience is the thing that's going to get you your next job. So over-index on bullets or details about that. Action verbs and percentages and dollar figures and specific technology, right? The thing you did just after you graduated 20 years ago, it's not going to matter that much. That's why I'm just recommending just do a technology dump on that. Work for this company, did this, here was the environment.
Okay. So let me do a quick recap, because this is very important in my opinion. A lot of people miss out on this. If you are a student, make sure don't have those fancy templates where you have your picture taken and then you have headers with saying this and footers with saying this. It tricks the system. So before it reaches you, then it can get jumbled up in the ATS environment itself. That's one. Second, make sure to put as much relevant work experience as possible, whether it's internship, co-op, some work experience you did maybe for your dad's friend's company, whatever. If it's a regular work experience that would triumph your coursework, that does not mean coursework is not important.
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah.
And as you grow more experience, it's all about relevant experience. And then, okay. Okay. So I got a pretty good idea of that. Now, a lot of fresh graduates complain that I don't have much work experience, and how do my resume would stand out in those circumstances?
Yeah.
How they can basically just get out of that downward spiral?
Yeah, very, very difficult. And I really feel for new graduates, but they have to rely on their network. So if they had great communication skills, they would use it. If they had great intellectual skills, they would use it. If they have parents and friends who are connected to hiring managers, use that skill. You call up all your friends and tell them to call up all their parents, and you go to all your old managers on your co-op term or whatever, and all the people that you know on LinkedIn, and you say, hey, I'm looking for a job. Can you please help me? Is there anything available? Introductory, entry level, co-op, internship, unpaid intern, paid internship, anything, just get me in the door. And you lean on your referrals. So if you have a very successful family, don't feel bad if you're working for your mom or dad's company. Don't feel bad if they find you a job at their friend's company who is also a very, an entrepreneur that started up a software development company. You take it and you learn, and then you can branch out on your own, but get that work experience first. So you have to differentiate yourself somehow, and it's not easy. Also, generally, go to the places where the people that want to hire you are at. So go to the conferences, go to the tech shows, go to, if you have to, the bars and restaurants where these people hang out. Back in the pre-COVID days, that's what we used to do, or certainly back in the 90s, that's what we used to. It's just the same as anything else. If you want to be smart, hang out with smart people. If you want to be funny, hang out with funny people. If you want sporty things to happen, hang out with sporty people. If you want things to happen in terms of your career, go hang out with those career people hang out.
Very sound advice. Basically, just keep broadcasting that, hey, I want this to anyone who might be able to remotely help you with that, and see if something lands.
Yeah, and just, you need to have that energy. You still need to be polite and patient, but it's terribly difficult. It's one of the hardest things is to get that first job out of school. I'm very glad for co-op programs. And now when I was graduating, only a couple of universities even had co-op programs. Now they almost all do. And sometimes students will get a little bit picky with their co-op terms. Don't be picky. It's not going to be your last job. Go and work and make connections. Those managers are going to leave and go somewhere else. Make a good connection. One job pays $2 more than the other one. Doesn't matter. You're a student. Go and get that experience. And anytime there's a chance to volunteer, being mentored by someone more senior, working after hours because of something, you do it, and you'll get
Exactly.
noticed.
Yeah, especially if you're a student, you don't have to pick up kids. You have time, all the time in the world. Use it for your career. It will grow. Definitely
Exactly.
help. Because I became parents like a couple of years ago. So now I know if I have to put time towards something, that's it. I have to plan 10 things in order to do that. As a student, if I knew how important time was, I would have done things differently as well. So
Yeah. I'm sure you still did a pretty good job, but there's always room for improvement, but good
of
advice.
course. No, for sure. Now, along the same lines, how do like folks who are already in their career, someone who maybe has a job for 2 years, 3 years, and or someone with the 5 years experience, but feels like they're stuck in the same company, just working the same regular hours and same thing. How can they advance into more senior roles? Maybe something like at a principal level, director level, manager level, team lead, whatever.
Yeah. So generally, I think it's fair to say there's two ways to advance. You advance through the company you're with, or you advance by leaving. So let's take the through the company you're with sort of scenario. Then it's important that you really endear yourself to your boss and to your boss's boss and to all the bosses around your boss, so the other senior managers or whatever level that you're at. So similarly, just be helpful and available. Understand that it's your direct boss that you've got to please. That's the one that's got that weight over your bonus, over when you get to take your vacation, over your ability to be promoted. Your job is to make that person look good. Your job is still to be loyal to the organization, but your job is to make your boss look good. I think a lot of people forget that after a while, and you may not even like your boss, but you make them look good, then they are going to help you. You make them look bad, then either you have to eliminate them, which is not easy to do, or you can't eliminate them and they're not going to help you. But when you're in an organization as well, especially as a full-time employee, perhaps continue to get trained, use human resources, go get training on the latest certification of whatever it is that you want to advance your career on. Make sure you keep your LinkedIn, your resume up to date. So a lot of people say, well, I'm not going to update my LinkedIn until I'm ready to look for a new job. Then all of a sudden they get really active on LinkedIn. It becomes apparent to their boss and everybody else that all of a sudden something's going on. But if you keep your LinkedIn up to date, lots of posts, accept every person that's coming in, then it becomes a little less suspicious when you are looking for a job.
Okay, sweet. And what about the second path where you have to
leave the organization? Yeah, so that becomes really tricky. So you need to perform well where you are, and then you need to beat the bushes and see what else is out there and go and speak to your old managers or your old organizations and see who's still there, see who's not there. Continue to apply to everything that you need to online. That's another thing. Like if you get caught sometimes your manager will figure out, oh, wait, I know you applied to this job at XYZ company through some method that they shouldn't have found out, but they do. You can then answer, oh, I apply to every job all the time. It's not an insult to you, boss. It's just what I do all the time, just to see what else is out there. But if that's not what you're doing, then it becomes very apparent when you start to apply. So you can diffuse the situation by always looking for the better thing. And then you say to your boss, listen, my job is to look for the better thing at all times, whether it be in here or outside of here, but I'm always going to be loyal to you, and I'll let you know first if it looks like, there's something else out there of interest to me, and we can talk about it. Your boss is doing the same thing, so they're going to understand that that's what you're doing. They're ready to leave if someone offers them a lot more money with a better job and, better circumstances. They'll leave too. So they'll understand that candor and that open honesty. But if you are able to leave a position, it's a little bit sad that oftentimes, and I've seen it happen with many organizations, a good person will kind of hit a ceiling in the organization that they're with. Maybe their boss isn't going to be leaving, or there's only fewer difference in their career. There's no more upward mobility. Even laterally, you can't go to another group because the company is too big or too small or whatever. There's nowhere going. You get another job outside of the organization. You reluctantly leave for more money or a better package or whatever it is. But then 3 or 4 years later, you really want to return. You want to make sure that opportunity to return is there. But oftentimes, organizations will bring back a previous employee at a much higher job grade or salary or position title than they would have been if they just stuck it out and went up through the ranks. That is a successful situation for the candidate, but I would consider that very unsuccessful internal staff management. You could have had a great person if you just promoted them and gave them what they wanted. Instead, organization, they were forced to leave. They learned all kinds of great skills. You missed them, and you had to bring them back at a higher price than if you would have just kept them the whole time. Shame on you. But it happens all the time. So if you're an individual, do it. Keep that door open. Don't steal the goldfish and throw things around the office when you leave. Leave on good terms, because you might be invited back at 1 or 2 levels above where you thought you would have been if you just stayed there.
Exactly. So don't burn any bridges.
Don't burn bridges. Because it doesn't make you any money to burn bridges. There's only negative side. It might feel good at the time, but in actual fact, there's no upside to burning a bridge.
Exactly. There is no cinematic way of quitting a job. It's just say thank you.
If you were going to do that, do it when you're in high school or university. Get it out of your system early. When you're older and you've got kids to look after and a spouse and a mortgage, and that, you don't have time to burn bridges. It's not a good idea.
When we talk about IT hiring, it's been changing substantially. Even when I started my career like 10 years ago compared to today, I see a lot of different changes. And now there are like these 8 rounds and 7 round interviews, and then there are these technical rounds and this and that. So let's break it down by major chunks.
Okay.
What do you think a person should be doing when we speak about like technical interviews? So be it like coding challenges, or be it technical discussions, or take home assessments, what as a recruiter or as a hiring manager, what they would be feeling about the candidate?
Yeah. So I guess maybe if I could address the strategy of what to do when you're faced with a technical interview or coding challenge or what have you. They can be very difficult because some of the let's say highly technical coding challenges, could be a case study, could be a set of data. You got to take it home. You got so many hours and you got to upload the information. It used to be very difficult to cheat, but now it's a little easier. You have resources. It's like a bit of a battle because I have these internal conversations with hiring managers and we say, well, we can give them a coding challenge, but what's to stop them from looking up the information? And then we have a counter conversation saying, well, if they were on the job, we would expect them to look up the information. So that's actually a fairly good skill if they can do it quickly. They can still finish in an hour. What do I care if they looked it up or if they knew it, so long as they got the answer right. Another issue that I hear quite often is that there's different approaches to solving the same problem. So when you are providing your solution, it's good to say, well, that's how I would approach it based on the information you gave me. It might not be the optimal way, but it could work. Would you have done it a different way? Especially if it's a live video conversation with another technical hiring manager who's just shooting off, what would you do to change the date field? What would you do to figure out duplicate submissions in the same whatever? There's different ways of doing that. Always finish with, that's how I would approach it based on what we're doing. Like, is that how you would have done it or would you have done differently? And then don't get into an argument, especially if there's a panel interview and there's one architect there or one peer to you who just is saying everything you do is not good. Don't fall for that little trap. Just say, oh, okay, well, if that's the way you'd have done it, I guess I could do it that way too. I would probably check with my team lead and then I would, proceed. Don't get into a fight, even if you think that they're completely wrong.
In order to basically go through it, have an open conversation. They are judging based on your technical skills, but also how you take back the feedback.
Yeah. Yeah. Because so at the end of the day, and maybe I'm jumping ahead a couple of questions, but any organization is going to ask, and any hiring manager is asking themselves generally three things. Number one, can this person do the job? Do they have the technical capabilities to do the job? Yes or no? Number two, will they get along with the team? Or are they going to be a giant pain? And yes, they can do the job, but they're going to drive everybody crazy and miserable, and they're not going to be good with the team. And based on those two answers, they might ask themselves, number three, can we afford this person? Is their salary expectation reasonable, or are they going to be all out of whack and cause all kinds of internal equity issues? So your job in the interview is to get the hiring decision makers to fully agree that you can do the job, you have the technical capabilities, and that you're going to be a positive influence in the organization with the team.
Okay.
Then the money will come. So if then you reverse engineer that, you got to make sure you answer all the technical questions. You got to make sure, be humble enough to say, well, if I can't get this problem, I'll go to my team lead. I'll go to my manager. That's why you have a manager there. That's why we have a team. I'll look it up. I'll try to do whatever. But if I'm still stuck, I'm not going to sit there for 3 days and not produce anything. I'm going to go and talk to somebody. Your manager will say, good, because everybody gets stuck on something. That's why we have a team. You're going to try it. You come up with some solutions. And if that doesn't work, you're going to come and talk to me. That's why I'm here.
Absolutely. And solution that might be correct might not be fit for the company for XYZ reasons. Maybe something you're building is extremely efficient, but you are building it on a junk that was built 20 years ago and it no longer works.
It's not going to work.
So, exactly, right? So then you make adjustments on that. Yeah. Now, in terms of, I think you brushed it on that, but what are, apart from being open to take feedback and being communicative within the team and staying humble, what do you think are the core soft skills that are highly valuable today, especially to clear interviews, to go ahead in your career, everything?
Yeah, of course, for the interview things, small things like don't be late to the interview, wear appropriate clothing in the interview, tidy up your stuff in behind for the interview, small things like that. That could be the difference. But especially when you're at maybe intermediate to more senior intermediate positions, HR and the hiring managers notice these sort of things. Okay, this guy's probably pretty disorganized and he didn't bother wearing a collared shirt to the interview. At least I noticed that, but I'm an older recruiter. If it's a Friday and there's some leeway there, but it starts to add red flags. If you're late to the interview and you had a bunch of laundry in the background of your screen and you weren't really answering my question. So one of the things that really irritates me, and I think hiring managers, is if I ask you a question, answer first and then elaborate after you've answered. So if I were to say, do you have a certificate in A, B, and C? The answer is yes or no. Bang up that answer and then elaborate. No, I don't. But I have it in this, which is equivalent. Okay, great. So having that understanding that time is valuable. You want to, the hiring manager has a checklist in their head. They don't finish the interview saying, oh, I think he scored at 47.5 out of 52. They figure out how many checks and how many X's they have in their head. Does it seem like a good person? Check or X? Did he seem like he knew what he was talking about? Yes or no? Was he on time? Yes or no? So the more checks, the better. The size of how you did that might not be as important as the fact that you've got the check mark in the first round of an interview. Then they're going to go into more detail when they drag you into the office or to have you talk to their team or do a technical assessment or whatever. But get as many checks as you can as quickly as you can in that first interview phase.
Awesome. So uh, make sure to be prepared and be sincere about your interview. Not serious, but at least sincere. Um, Now we hear quite a lot about company culture talk, company culture fit. There have been some extended examples like companies like Netflix and Apple. They have like very strict guidelines before they hire someone. But since you have been recruiting for so long with so many companies, what do you think is important in terms of culture fit, and how usually like hiring managers or recruiters feel about a candidate being fit to their culture?
Yeah, it's a very difficult subject, I find. So because I'm strictly a technical recruiter, I can forego a little bit of that because I am giving some advice from time to time on if I think a person's going to be a cultural fit, but I'm not always right. And I know that I'm not always right. So I would say to a candidate, get through the technical interview with or the technical recruiter, which is not all that technical. But when you're speaking to the hiring manager of the team, pay attention to what they do, how they say things, and what they do. And you want to emulate that. This is going back 100,000 years of human evolution of just conforming. So if everybody's wearing a collared white shirt, maybe you better pick up a couple of white collared shirts and just, that's what's going to make you look like part of the team, being a team player. If everybody's using, certain terminology, use that same terminology. Right. So if people say GCP as opposed to Google Cloud, then just say Google Cloud. Right. Don't try and don't out yourself as someone that wants to do it their own way when everybody's doing it this way when you're competing for a job. Now, once you get on board an organization, it's a little bit different, right? You can bring your own uniqueness, but do it in a positive, sincere way and in a helpful way. And then you might change the culture for the better because you're the breath of fresh air and you're the one that's getting everybody to go for a potluck lunch or doing whatever it is that you're doing and making a better place. But at first, 2 eyes, 2 ears, 1 mouth. Look and listen 4 times as more than you talk, right? And then just emulate that. So this is a very classic sort of scheme where politicians use it, people on dating sites use it. Just parrot back whatever you see. If the other person is kind of using hand gestures, then you use a little bit of hand gestures. If the other person is really well dressed, then you be a little, really well dressed. Then they have what's called a halo effect. So people will think, oh, this person's like me, I like me, so I'm going to like him because this person is doing the same thing.
Sweet. Yeah, exactly. I think this is also one of the things Dale Carnegie speaks in how to influence, how to win friends and influence
Win
people.
friends and influence
Exactly.
people.
That if you want to get a fish, you don't throw cheesecake. You throw a worm because fish likes the worm. So just like that. Now we have come a long way from meeting people in the bars and discussing things than to having now jobs being done through LinkedIn and GitHub and your portfolio, and you have created this React Native app and things like that. So what do you see whenever you are brushing through a resume or a LinkedIn profile? How do you assess that, hey, this looks like a strong, positive profile? And
I think having GitHub and portfolios like hyperlinked to resumes is becoming very useful in technical roles. So when I see that someone's done that, sometimes I click on them and it's so technical, I don't even know what they're doing, but I see the examples, but I log that to the hiring manager. Like I like the fact that this person had real examples of their work. Maybe they changed the customer information but they had it on their resume. It's clickable, or they sent it to me somehow. That'll bump you up a little bit. So having that capability to show the work that you've done could be really, really valuable, and shows that you're not afraid to kind of show what you've done. It's important that you make sure that the hiring manager and the recruiter and whoever it is knows that this is what you did. You weren't just a weak link in a group that did it. You did this yourself. So using words like I did and I did instead of we becomes really important. And I correct candidates on that all the time. Like, stop using the word we. I want to know what you did. I don't want any confusion over who did this work. So please answer, I did this, I did that, I was responsible for. Right? But that's when you're in the interview, and you got to think about that when you're constructing your resume and sort of applying. But another thing that's important is your resume had better match your LinkedIn, because I check that stuff too. If your LinkedIn is all over the map and it's got 6 different jobs and I can't match up your resume, what's going on here? He's hiding something. He or she's hiding something. Right. So if I go so far as to check, it better be there. And if I also check and you've got social media plastered with pictures of you in swim shorts, drinking alcohol all over the world, that might not be the best thing for a professional if you're at an intermediate to senior level job.
Yeah, that's why we see so many stories about politicians being dropped out from the middle of the races. Something that they said did in 2015 makes no sense now. So
Yeah.
exactly. Now with the LinkedIn and GitHub, how do you approach networking these days? Like, how to have effective networking?
I find it getting harder and harder because there's less opportunities for people just to go and talk. So yeah, it is necessary to make sure that you apply to all those positions, to user references, then to send a follow-up message in LinkedIn. Hey, just want to let you know I applied to this position, and it was, and like, make it easy for the person to say yes if they're thinking about it. Because, for example, if you applied to a position and I know it's in my system and you sent me a LinkedIn message, hey, I applied to a great job just now that fits my skills. That's not enough. Like, tell me which job, what was the job ID number, link it in there, say that you uploaded the resume. Like, don't make it harder for me to engage with you. I don't want to look up and see which job that you did. I don't want to reread stuff to see. Don't make it hard. Right? You've already taken the step out to me. Make it easy for me to say yes. And then maybe ask that question. Could you set aside 10 minutes to talk to me about the position? And the chance of me saying yes are probably 50%. Because I'll say, okay, well, he applied. He sent me the information I needed. I don't really have to second guess if they're a fit or not because he made it easy. Fine. I'll spend 10 minutes with you.
So always make sure to be brief and be exact. Try to minimize the work on the other person's end.
Yeah, just give them every opportunity to say yes to whatever your ask is and make the ask. Hey, can I spend 10 minutes with you? Can you help me? Can you review my resume? Or can I call you to whatever, like something? And not everything works on every recruiter. So I'm a little bit, because I'm older, some things work on me that don't work on others. And then other things don't work on me that work. So that's another very challenging thing. And that's why I think we're all trying to find a new way of being able to stand out of the crowd. And that's why, resumes with pictures and all kinds of stuff were in vogue for a while, but I don't know if it's really, now everybody's doing it. So it doesn't make you stand out, and it tricks too many ATS systems. So those referral networks are really important. Persistence can be important. And I tell my recruiters that I train and whatnot, like, don't get mad if someone emails you several times. But when you talk to them, say, apologize and say, but don't get mad if I don't get back to you right away either. I won't mind if you send me a lot of messages if you don't mind that I don't get back to you right away. We'll both be happy because they're just looking for a job. They're trying to do the best they can. They shouldn't be penalized for that. So some people think, oh, I don't want to bug the recruiter. I don't want to bug the hiring manager. No, it's their job to process information.
Exactly.
It'd be better to do something than do nothing.
Exactly. But so I'm pretty sure someone is going to comment, and I have also experienced this, the recruiter ghosting. I send message, and then nothing comes back. Nothing.
Yeah. It could happen for multiple reasons. It could be just usually it's because the recruiter is just swamped. They just can't. They got 1,000 resumes, and they already have their list of top 10, and so they're in the process. So why get back to all these people? Another thing that I want to touch on that as well, especially new students. Sometimes when we post, we say there's a posting cutoff date, and sometimes people wait till the end of that date. We may have already picked our top 10 people to go to interviews before that date even happens. So if you see a job, you apply immediately. Don't wait, because it'll be the first resume that I see. I might never get to the candidates that applied in the last few days. So you apply, and then use your network. Try and figure out Who's the hiring manager? Who's the recruiter? It works on me all the time because I panic. And when someone figures out I'm the recruiter, I don't know who they know. They could be best friends with the VP's, child. I don't want to make a mistake. I'm gonna spend some time with them because I don't want a referral or something to cost me looking like I wasn't doing my job quickly. So when a recruiter ghosts you, it's probably not because of you. It's probably because they're just swamped. It could be because the job is practically filled, and that often happens towards the end of the posting cycle. It could be that the job was already going to an internal candidate and the recruiter just had to post it for 2 weeks based on policy. No one was going to get the job. No applicant was going to get it, but they can't say that.
It
So it
still
just
has to
becomes
be
a
in.
numbers game. You just got to keep throwing darts at the dartboard. Don't get offended. Recruiters are being overworked, underpaid. There's too many of them. There's too few of them. There's too many racks. There's too many candidates. It's probably not personal.
I see. What about recruiter ghosting? Once again, I'm going off topic, but this is important. So, what about recruiter ghosting at the last stage of application? So, let's say you got selected, had interviews, had multiple interviews, were part of the final interviews, and then you are not hearing anything in return.
Yeah, that's because they're going with a different candidate. And you might
Okay.
not be the backup candidate. You might not be in second position. You might be in third or fourth, and there's very little chance you're going to get the job, even though you went through the whole process. It's heartbreaking. And I tell you, as a recruiter, I am, after 29 years, I still dread having to make those phone calls to all the candidates that didn't get the job. It's just heartbreaking. And so that's why my strategy is to say to every candidate, if there's an interest after this interview, I will contact you. If I haven't contacted you, it's because we're not interested in proceeding forward. It's a harsh
Okay.
thing to say, but it saves me because I could spend an hour trying to close the candidate that I want to hire, or I could spend an hour trying to tell 5 of the candidates are not getting the job.
Exactly. And
What am
all
I
the
going to
five.
do? Yeah. Those 5 candidates are not going to get me my fill that I need to make myself look good and fill the job. I got to spend all my time trying to get the job filled. And if you, for whatever reason, didn't quite make the cut, I just don't have time to tell you that. Because when I do, then you say, oh, well, can you tell me what I did wrong? And you ask for 5, 10, 15 more minutes of my time, which I didn't have in the first place. That's why you get ghosted. It's
Okay.
just like the dating scene. It means what you think it's going to mean. If the person really was interested in you, you wouldn't get ghosted. They've
I
lost
see.
interest somehow. Now on the hiring front, there are some professional ethics and standards that we hope everybody adheres to, and we call it dispositioning. We let everybody else know, thank you so much, really appreciate it. We've got a different route. Here's why, the candidate was a little stronger in this or that or whatever it is, but we really want you to apply again. So we try to do that, but not every organization is able to do that successfully. So please don't be offended, but that's why. It's because you're not getting the job.
Now, what are some of the common red flags do you see that are absolute deal breakers during the interview process?
Yeah, well, I guess it depends on who you're talking to, but generally, um, small things like being late for an interview or kind of botching up small things, they're little red flags, but I wouldn't say they're necessarily deal breakers. But if you had gone through and negotiated some salary and, terms, and then all of a sudden you want a huge increase in the salary and this is what happened during COVID, right? We'd have individuals, they knew, okay, we're the only option. I know I said X amount, I want X plus 20%. That irritates the recruiter, the hiring manager, human resources, the VP of the department, and it just becomes so frustrating because now we've gone through 4 or 5 rounds of interviews and now the candidate has really changed their mind, right? But although that's annoying to an organization, I think an individual needs to know who's holding the cards. Do you have skills that are so rare and so in demand that you can do that? Then, hey, I don't begrudge anybody making the most money they can so they can pay their mortgage, put their kids in school, have a nice car, do whatever it is they want to do. Make as much money as you possibly can. It's the way that you approach it that could be an issue. And still the hiring manager might say, especially if it's a very technical position, we still need this person. Okay, we got to find a way to pay them. So it's not really a deal breaker. But being rude, for example, or I think a lot of times people might think that they've got the job. They take the foot off their gas a little bit and they get a little bit too cavalier, especially in front of the department VP, who's just there to make sure that things are okay. And if you, say the wrong joke or try and get a little bit too cute, like, don't do that. Be professional until the end, especially in the final stage of the interview, because somebody is circling back and the VP is going to say, I don't know, I don't think I want to work with this person. And then that hiring manager who really wants you has no choice but to say, well, forget it, because that VP pays my bonus. And sometimes that VP says, okay, if you think this person is the best fit, would you stake your bonus next year on this person's performance?
So they do have those conversations behind the scenes.
Just to prove to them, like, if you think they're that good, are you willing to stake your bonus on this? Oh, no, I don't think I'm willing to stake my bonus on it. Well, then they probably aren't as good as you think they are, and they pissed me off somewhere down the line. Find somebody else.
Okay.
So that could be a deal breaker. Like, don't do anything that's so different and try to take advantage in the 11th hour that pisses off people, especially the department executive who's going to sign off on the spend. And I've seen it happen even with our organization, where it's just like, no, you just, everything was in place and you blew yourself up right at the end. And now I got to start from scratch. Hiring manager disappointed. There's no other way that you're going to get even a similar job in the next couple of years, because everybody's going to remember how you came in and, acted a fool. So just be very professional, even after you start. Don't come in on day one and start cracking jokes. Wait till year 2, and then you can start to do something different.
Once again, 2 eyes, 2 ears, 1 mouth. So observe what others are joking about. Yeah.
Deal breakers is a hard thing to kind of say, because some hiring managers will say, oh, they were late for the interview, they're gone. And so as a recruiter, I'm like, okay, well, just hold on a second here. Maybe there's a tech issue, maybe whatever. We can't do that to everybody because they're still really good. Sometimes 51% of my job is actually getting hiring managers to do what they need them to do. And only 49% is actually about the candidates.
So now you mentioned something very important here about the salary negotiations, that in the beginning you decide on X amount, maybe things change, or maybe the market changed, the things have shifted. And I see many, like when I am applying for multiple places, all the recruiters ask me that, what is your salary expectation, negotiation? I try to avoid that question in the beginning, but sometimes they are like too persistent on that. And then I might throw them a number and then things would work out in either direction. So what is the best strategy to approach that?
So not only am I an internal recruiter working on behalf of an organization, I'm also an agency recruiter working on behalf of the candidate, trying to get them the highest starting salary they can. So those conversations are at odds. So I'm going to speak now as an agent. What I would say to somebody I'm representing who's trying to get the highest starting salary they can is answer the question. So if you are selling something online, you wouldn't say, well, I'm not going to tell you how much this thing is, make me an offer. It's up to you. You're selling yourself. Have a price for yourself. The easiest thing to do is say, well, I'm making this much now. I'm looking for at least that much, or ideally 10% more. Now, know that the potential new employer is never going to be able to find out how much you actually make. You could make up any number that you wanted. They might not believe you, but you don't have to necessarily say the exact number. So you could say to them, even though you're making, let's say, 100K, you could say, well, I'm making currently, 110 now, and I'm looking for 10% more, so I'm looking around 120, even though you're only making 99. But that conversation makes sense, because it's like, okay, well, yeah, I guess I'd want 10% more if I want to leave my position too. And if it's in their budget, or if it's way out of their budget, you'll know right away. They'll say, oh, that's like, we're looking at 80, and then there's not a fit. Then you got to backtrack a little bit, but would you really accept 80? Yeah, maybe not. But then you can ask them, okay, I answered your question. Now you answer mine. What's the salary range for this position? And most recruiters will say, well, you answered my question quickly without me having to pull it out of you. You know what? I owe you an answer. And actually now there's new legislation coming, if it's not here already. Companies have to post the salary range for positions.
Yes, they do. But I tend to see them in a very large spectrum. So, exactly. It's like,
so that's why it's important to say, well, I'm making that right now. I'm making a lateral move. Whether you are or aren't, they're not even allowed to ask for a T4 or ask you to prove that. They'll never know. Right now, here's the thing. If you come on board and you inflated your salary and they give it to you, and instead of you went from 99 to 130, and I tell this to candidates, you better perform at 131 of value. Because if you don't, then you're going to get a poor performance review and you're going to be, subject to disciplinary action.
Okay.
So I say it like this. I'm a car guy. I say, if you're going to buy a $100,000 Mercedes, you would better get $101,000 of satisfaction out of it. If you get $99,000 of satisfaction out of your $100,000 Mercedes, you're mad. If you buy a $60,000 Toyota and you get $65,000 in satisfaction, you will say this is the best Toyota, the best car you've ever had. You want the candidate to understand that. Like, are you setting yourself up for failure because you're asking for such high salary that the standards are going to be so high against you, you're never going to be able to live up to it? Or would you accept our salary range and grow with the company? Like, are you here for money or are you here for growth? And so as a recruiter, I feed that back. I said, well, on the first interview, I asked you why you're leaving. You said you wanted growth, you wanted good technology. You didn't say anything about money. And now it's all about money. What has changed?
And can someone be just honest that I have worked with this company, I have learned good substantial amount of things. Now my circumstances have changed, and it would be great to get new experience, new learnings with a compensation bump, and this is why I'm doing it.
Sure, absolutely, absolutely. And many organizations that are very good, and Cineplex is one of them, we will say, well, this person asked for less than what our range is. We can't give them that. We could save the money, but that would be internal equity would be an issue. And when they find out, like, do the right thing here. We're going to give them our salary grade. And I know a lot of HR departments will say, wait a second, why are you offering for the senior level development position? You're offering the bottom of the grade or below the grade. No, you can't do that, because you're basically saying that this candidate doesn't fit the position because they're asking for too little. Find a different candidate, or you offer them within the grade. So companies are getting better at that, because as soon as a candidate comes on board, they find out they've been underpaid, they're mad, and then they'll just leave. We'll train them, we won't get work product out of them, and they'll leave for more money, and we've just lost a whole bunch of time and energy. So candidates should know that generally organizations are willing to pay the proper amount for the right person. If they're balking at it, it's probably legit, because sometimes they have to say, listen, we think you're great, but we just can't do that number. And I told you that on day one, and that hasn't changed. I didn't lie to you on day one. That was the range, and we can't go outside the range. And you can ask, can you do a couple bucks more? Some places can do that, or a signing bonus or whatever, but most places don't.
Okay. So all in all, have a number in your mind as a candidate. And when you get to a stage about offer being accepted and you are discussing the salary, at least have that negotiation, but be willing to understand their side as well.
So and I would say if you are if you want to be an exemplary candidate, in the middle or at the end of each one of your interviews, bring it up. Say, okay, this has been great. I'm really excited about the position. I know the salary range is between here and here. I just want to reiterate, I think I'm within your range. I'd like the higher end of the range. So then there's no surprises. And good recruiters will do that for them. So on the debrief after each interview, let's say, okay, are we still good with that salary range? Are we still good? And feed that back to the hiring manager. But some recruiters aren't that good, or they just don't have the time. So the candidate could take the bull by the horns on that one and just reiterate. And then it works on the hiring manager in a subtle way. Because the hiring manager, it's not their money. It's the company's money. The hiring manager sees this, though, as it's in the salary band. I'm happy. HR is happy. The hiring manager has influence more over the bonus. Who gets the higher bonus? Who gets the lower bonus? Right? But their salary range, like, give them the top end of the range. What do I care? Not my money. So you want to influence that. Oh, every time we spoke, they were very polite, very professional, and always made sure that they knew they're looking for the top end of the range. No surprises. So when the hiring manager comes back to me, the recruiter, and says, make the offer at a lower rate, and I'll say, whoa, we've told you every single step of this 5-step process that they're looking for this number. I'm not going back to them with that low number. It's going to be a no. I've told you this 6 different times. They're looking for this number. And then the hiring manager will say, oh, okay, you're right. I guess go with this number.
Makes sense. Now, number is this one golden thing that everyone wants to stick to it. Companies are becoming more and more complex in their compensation offerings. So now you have RSUs, you have stock options, you have bonuses, you have quarterly bonuses, you have company performance, and you have base salary, and all of this combination. So how do, and I think this is more prevalent for intermediate to senior folks,
Yep.
how they can best negotiate this whole compensation package when we talk about, because I know I'm spending more time on compensation, but just wanted to
Yeah.
get your perspective on that.
The higher you go in the organization, the more important variable compensation is. There are RSUs and the percentages. It becomes then the salary becomes less and less important. And I would even argue that if you're at a senior level position, it's okay to have a lower salary because in a year or two, HR will notice, wait a second, this senior person is below the midpoint of the grade. We got to fix that. And then your merit increase will come easily. But where you really need to dig your feet in then is just get the most RSUs you can, get the highest bonus percentage you can, get the highest number of vacation, whatever the little ancillary things are. Now, organizations know this, so they may have policies. Nope, nobody below a level, whatever, gets more than 3 weeks of vacation. And if you're below that level, you can get 4 weeks on your 7th anniversary or whatever it is, right? The end. There's no exceptions to that at all, right? And usually the recruiter will say that, which I know this is the case with the organizations you and I worked with, right? There's just no negotiating that. Done.
Exactly.
We can, but as a candidate, explore that. Listen to the voice of the recruiter or the hiring manager. And if there's hesitation, like, well, maybe I'll go back. Okay, maybe there's an opportunity, right? Let's put something together that we're all happy with. But I like the approach where it's collaborative and it looks like there's some give and take. Like, oh, you want me to start early, or maybe I can do some reading over the weekend even before I start. But in exchange for that, can you go back and ask for me to have that level of bonus or that level of RSUs or whatever? And yeah, I've got a vacation, but maybe I'll restructure it for you if you can do this for me. And just take as much as you can get. Hopefully that compensation is not the reason why you took the job. It's more than that. But this is why having a good agent helps. If you're represented by an agency, let them do it. Because then they take the emotion out of it, and then if the hiring manager is going to be mad, they're mad at the agent, not at the individual.
Okay. So how do agent negotiations work? So explain the whole process. So let's say a candidate would apply for the job and then hire the agent, or it would be agent working with the candidate,
Agent
apply.
first. Yeah, yeah. If the agent is representing the candidate, then the agent's going to drive that. And they're going to drive it not because they're power hungry, it's because they don't want things to go wrong. So they will act as the internal recruiter, really appraising the hiring manager of things. Well, it's a great candidate. I know your salary range was A to B. They want B plus a little bit, but they're getting that right now at their current company, which is the only company that has all the technology that you were looking for. They're willing to make a move. They had their second, whatever the circumstance was, and they can speak very openly because they're not part of HR. They have a second child. Second child has some special needs. They need to make sure that the work from home is the way it is. They need a couple bucks more to pay for mobility device, whatever it is, right? And they can really paint the picture. And then they can say, oh, and they also have 2 other interviews with 2 other organizations that really want them. That's a powerful one. Like, oh no, they got, and I've been in so many meetings where I'd say, they've got 2 other offers coming if we don't give them what they want. They picked us number 1, they want us number 1, but if we don't come up with all the little things they're looking for, they got 2 other offers waiting. And that shuts down any nickel and diming conversations pretty quickly. Oh, I guess we better give them the top salary then. Let's not even bother with offering them 5K less. Right? Makes my life easier. So whoever is assisting, but that's very difficult for the candidate to do when looking at the hiring manager, but they can do it.
Okay, perfect. So, and when do you think that would make more sense strategically? Earlier in their career, later down the road in their career, to work with an agency or someone?
Oh, yeah. Well, most agents, they're getting paid a hefty sum to find candidates that are difficult to find. So usually it does not include co-op and new grads and 1 to 5 year individuals. Right. So you got to do that on your own. Now, if it's a brand new tech that's really in vogue, okay, maybe, but you'd have to register with the agency first. I would say, given that I'm an agent as well as an internal recruiter, if a candidate is really strong with communication skills and just general intelligence, they can do this on their own.
Okay.
They can manipulate the system. I even tell candidates sometimes that when you go in to a final interview or second to final interview, you could take a lot of pressure off the hiring manager simply by saying this: hey, Mr. Hiring Manager, Mrs. Hiring Manager, how about I'll tell you what I think this job is about, and if we agree on that, I'll tell you why I think I'm the best fit for this job. And the hiring manager says, Great. Tell me what you think this job is about. And they say, okay, well, I think you need this, A, B, C, D, E. And I'm like, okay, yeah, that's what the job is all about. Okay, do you want to know why I think I have skills in those areas? Absolutely, I do. I'm just sitting there taking notes. It makes their life easy. It makes it impossible to say no. That's a very advanced interview technique. But people that can do it, they're gonna have multiple offers with great organizations, and they're gonna be the ones calling the shots. Yeah. If the interviewee thinks, okay, my job is to make this manager's problems go away. I'm there to solve problems. I'm not there just to put in 9 to 5. I'm there to make this person's work life easier. How can I convince them that if they hire me, I'm going to make their work life easier and make them look good to their boss? Like that's a good mentality to have. But here's what I think where the issues are. Here's what I think what you need based on what you told me in the last interview. So here's what I think I can do to help, because I've done it over here at XYZ company. I've done it over here at ABC company, and I've kept up to date on those skills. And I really like doing this stuff. Even if you don't like doing this stuff, doesn't matter. And then the hiring manager's like, oh, if I bring this person on board, I'm going to get home earlier. I'm going to see my kids. My boss is going to be happy because things are going to get back on track. I can't afford not to have this person. Then they're going to go to bat for you for the extra money and the extra vacation or whatever.
I received this advice from one of the managers I used to work for in my previous jobs. He told me that I personally always used to struggle with the imposter syndrome and used to undersell myself. That was back in the day. I
Yeah.
am trying to improve on that. But whenever you are speaking with a candidate, do you generally get the idea that what is the current skill set versus the potential growth, that they are not even exploring that? Or and how can basically they just get out of this loop?
Yeah. Well, maybe because I'm a more experienced recruiter, but I prefer a candidate to be a little humble than a little bit too over the top. But I check that with their resume, especially if they're an intermediate or more senior hire, because the resume will speak volumes. Oh, you work for these companies that I recognize every one of them. You were there for a significant amount of time. You told me why you left each position, and it makes sense. You had to have been good. You wouldn't have survived that long with these organizations if you were no good. And you got promotions within the organization, because I see you went from manager to senior manager to department lead, all within the space of 4 years at ABC company that is known throughout the world as being a good company. And now you're being humble. And so I send that in my notes to the hiring manager. I'm like, this person is better than what they project to be, because they're that confident in what they do. And they're not going to come in and, say that I'm the best there is. They're going to come in and show that they're the best that there is, quietly doing their work and getting stuff done. So you're able to detect that. If it's in the interview process, yes, you got to err on the side of bragging a little bit, and make sure the recruiter knows to give you a good write-up, or make sure the hiring manager knows, oh yeah, this person can really help out. Just make sure you can back it up. Don't say that you can do something and then you're not able to do it. But once you're in the role, then similarly, just perform. Right? Then you don't even have to. And I think, Parth, you're probably this guy. You don't really have to say much when your work speaks for itself. And then your manager's going to come to you. Hey, Parth, can you lead this team? Hey, Parth, it's bonus time. You're getting the top nod. Hey, Parth, there's a new job that's going to be opening up. You should apply for it.
That's a sweet spot to be. So
yeah. If you're having to defend your project, yourself, how you worked, why you weren't there on Friday afternoon when the email came in, and it took you, until Monday to respond. Now you're behind the 8 ball, right? You got to dig yourself out.
Okay.
But once you prove yourself for a while, then it becomes, Parth is going to get to it when he gets to it. And when he gets to it, it's going to be solved. So I don't care if he doesn't get to it Friday in the middle of summer in the afternoon. If it comes back on Monday, Tuesday, good enough.
We see a lot of examples, non-tech people, they start learning things on Udemy or YouTube, and then now they want to apply and come into the tech world.
Yeah.
How basically they can convince recruiters and hiring managers that I have this and I want this?
Yeah, it's tough to convince a recruiter, because the recruiter is just a victim of it too. The recruiter is going to say the same thing as the candidate's going to say. Got to give this person a shot. Like, maybe they'll do really well. So the candidate should go to their hiring manager and say, listen, I want to do more stuff that's outside of my realm. Like, are there any projects I can work on? Can I go sit in with the tech guys over there and just listen to what's going on, and maybe do it after hours or whatever. Like I won't let my work suffer, but let me go and see what else is going on. And the hiring manager might be like, oh, I see what's going on. Our, I don't know, our support role is kind of boring and you want to do new development, but good hiring managers say, you know what? Yeah, go. Because I know I can't hold on to you forever, but I don't want the organization to lose you. So we have lots of groups within the organization that you're working now and other groups that'll do that. Oh yeah, you want to go and mess around with the architecture people? Okay. Yeah, go, don't ask for more money when you're doing it, but just say, can I just go and work on a couple of projects or help out or hang out with them? It also happens in our technical support groups, right? So we got our help desk folks and they end up with the second and third level people just doing stuff, installing things, and now they have that skill. When that job becomes available, they're a shoo-in. If you are a pure developer, but you're hanging out with the architecture team, when an architecture role comes up, they'll even say, well, actually, we really want this guy to come over. Why don't we just bring him over? He's here all the time helping us anyways for free. Or I shouldn't say for free, but helping us when we don't even ask and he's doing a great job. Yeah, we can teach him more. We'd love to have him. He's a good guy or good girl. So
Exactly.
once you're in an organization, and that's why it also helps to be in a bigger organization that has the things that you want to get to. And I tell that to people applying at Cineplex. Like a lot of people apply at Cineplex also work at Tim Hortons. And it's okay. Well, Cineplex is a huge IT shop. Tim Hortons, not so much, right? At least if you're part of Cineplex and everybody likes working in the theaters and rec room, whatever, they have a good time. It's nice, friendly, as opposed to the pressure of Tim Hortons. At least you get to see an end user technical support job before anybody else does, or first level help desk, or entry level co-op, or whatever. You have the chance of getting that job as a employee already of Cineplex, and I will see your resume first. Similar to anybody else working right now, there's probably some divisions where you could just hang out and do some work if that's how you want to change, because you can't just leave and then come back as all of a sudden you're an IT person.
Okay. So you have to build up to that.
And do it while you're working. Ideally, in a job environment, not just a training environment, with the company you're working for.
Okay. And what about outside organization? So let's say if I'm working in an oil rig and I'm just building my muscle and pulling oil out of the field, and now I suddenly decide I want to become a DevOps guy.
Yeah,
How do I?
yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe that's like the example. That would be nearly impossible, I guess. But let's say something a little closer to what might actually happen is if you're in whatever organization and they're just too small, is your first job out of school or whatever, or second job, then you got to go start doing some project-based work. Like go with your buddy. Oh, I see like you got a little assignment building some websites or doing some functionality or some security or cyber defense or whatever it is. Can I just, do some of that work with you? And then you put it on your resume. Get them to pay you $1. Then it's a work experience, right? Then it's something. It's not just a goof off project for free. Get them to pay you some amount of money. You loan them $200 and have them pay you $200. Do whatever you can to make it that work experience section. And then people will see it, and then maybe you'll meet some people, and then you can sort of parlay that. So when we go to these conferences like Be Future and like all those places that we've been going to, lots of people say, well, yeah, I'm doing this job right now, but I'm doing some project-based work. And it sounds kind of like dodgy, but it's better than nothing. Oh, what did you do? Oh, for a small organization, I helped my friend build some cybersecurity policies. Okay, well, that's something. Maybe our cyber team wants to see that.
Okay.
So find different ways. And you're going to be underpaid and overworked, but that's how you transition.
Yeah. What do you think has been the impact of COVID and now the remote work and hybrid work and all these things? How that has changed recruiting and overall work?
Yeah, it's added a lot of chaos, I would say, because it went from kind of in the middle of COVID to we couldn't find enough candidates. And we were making job offers to candidates that weren't really even that good. And even they were turning us down. But then it normalized after a while where then we were having a good balance. And now it's gone almost the opposite way. Now the environment's more difficult because of interest rates and what's going on in the States. And so now it's back to like an employers are calling the shots as opposed to candidates, and the candidates were definitely calling the shots at the beginning and in the middle of COVID when everybody had to work from home and redo systems and organizations had to do whatever they could do to capture people's spend. Now we've normalized. So it has been kind of difficult. I think that candidates are finding out quickly that there was a time in COVID where they could demand any number and they would get it, but now that's not the case. And if you're still thinking that way, you're going to be left out. Organizations are forcing people back to the office. That's a bigger issue in that giant banks, insurance companies, they have property and it's vacant, and they're not going to put up with that. So if they all say everybody back to the office, there's not much you can do about it, right? Unless you want to go for a small firm. And it's difficult because now you set up your life, you can pick up the kids, you can do this, you can clean the house, and now you're being forced back into the office. So I do think that's a challenge, and us recruiters are in the same boat. But I think it should have been proven that you can work effectively remotely depending on how you structure your team. So the good, cunning hiring manager will say, well, actually, no, I don't really care where you are, as long as you're performing and delivering. So it's important to know what type of hiring manager you have and what the policy is of the organization. And even if there is a policy of the organization, how strictly is it policed? If you have a deal with your hiring manager, like just get the work done. Come in early, leave early, come in late, leave late, come in late, leave early, whatever, just get the work done. And don't let it be known that you're not here all the time. But it has been chaotic. And I think we're not at the end of job on that because there's still a lot of vacancies in downtown. And there's still a lot of 3 days from home, 2 days from the office, 3 days from the office, 2 days at home. Could that be changing with larger organizations? Probably. So everybody's got to be willing to make some adjustments on that.
Okay. Yeah, especially I think even government is now forcing 4 and 5 days a week back to the office.
Yep. And as soon as the big organizations start doing it, everybody sort of has to follow suit. If you're a very small, nimble firm, you could take advantage of that, but you're only employing 50 people. How's that going to help the whole population? Not really.
Exactly. Yeah. And that too, if you let your office go, that, hey, I don't need the space anymore, we can just do it remotely. And then but that's a very small percentage. I don't even see any remote jobs now. Very few.
Right. Much fewer before. It used to be standard, and now you got to double check.
Exactly. Now, what does a typical hiring process that you follow from initial screening to offer stage? Is it just standard? You work with the candidate, or you let the candidate shine? I'm speaking as an internal recruiter, and then maybe I think you think about it as an agent, but.
So typically what I do as an internal recruiter, I have an agreement with the hiring manager. And typically what I say is either they or me looks through the resumes and picks the top 10, for example, that we think could be a good fit based on what we see on the resume and on our practice system, which may include their location, may include some what we call, interview questions, so application questions. Are you legal entitled to work in Canada? Are you interested in working from the office 3 days a week? Whatever the questions are. And assuming that's all okay, then we pick our top 10. Then what I typically do is I do a phone screen, which is 10 to 15 minutes, just to make sure that they can have good communication skills, their resume makes sense, they tell me why they left their last positions, they tell me about their salary expectations, just confirming the things that I already suspect. Then I make a recommendation to the hiring manager. Okay, I interviewed all 10. And the hiring manager may say, okay, great. Or they might say, well, Anand, which one do you think are the top 5? And can you rank order them? In which case I do. Then they'll select 3 to 6 to interview. Then I call the candidates. Okay, prep them for the interview. Here's what's going to happen. It's going to be a phone screen, phone interview with the hiring manager. Take it seriously. This is going to be very important, or it's going to be in person. And typically I tell the candidate that first interview with the hiring manager is the most important interview by far. That'll be 90% of the decision to hire. They've got to be on that one. If there's an interview after that, it means they did really well, and they're meeting the team or doing a technical assessment or meeting the department VP. And I think depending on the position, there should only be probably 4 points of contact, right, at most. So my initial telephone or video screen with them, initial meeting with the hiring manager, and hopefully only 1 more interview after that, just to make sure we have the right person. Sometimes 2, if we have 2 candidates and we can't tell them apart. But no more than 4.
Okay.
That typically is the process. And then all the while, I work with the candidate to make sure there's no surprises. Okay, this is working from the office. I was located here. The salary range is this. You told me you're looking for this much. Hey, do good in the interview, but we're all on the same page, right? That's why we're interviewing for the final interview. Yes. So there's no surprises when we go to offer.
Okay. And when you actually do go to offer, how many candidates do you have as a backup? Let's say if you interviewed 5 people, do you have like, okay, first we are going to offer this person. If some reason it does not work out, this is the backup, and then this is the backup of the backup? Is it like typically
I would
how it
say
goes?
far more than 50% of the time, if we don't get the person we want, we won't offer to another person in the queue. We will start fresh. Because the hiring manager is so disappointed they didn't get the person that they want. They kind of don't want to go to plan B unless that person is really close. So maybe 40% of the time, that second candidate might still be a viable fit. But that depends on many things like market conditions. In the middle of COVID, we would go to plan B, C, and D. But now the hiring manager is like, wow, maybe we should start again because I really like that person. They turned us down for whatever reason. Find me another one just like that. And that other
Okay.
person, and that's why the ghost thing happens. Because I'm like, oh, I really like that second person too. They could do the job, but the hiring manager now is just not having any of it. And I know I've got 1,000 other people I can look at. So probably, yes, I could find another one.
Okay.
But
So
it's quite disappointing.
be that as it may, I think it would waste like so much time for hiring managers, people, all the people in the interview process. Uh,
Yeah, it's not the most efficient way of doing things. And we try and convince a hiring manager, well, if you didn't have that first candidate, would you have hired the second one? Yeah, absolutely would have. Well, there you go. So so bring them on board. Yeah, but now I know what could have been, and I don't know. Maybe show me a couple more. But that's our job. My loyalty is to the hiring manager.
okay, spoiled for choices, but still,
Yeah.
exactly. Have you had like in your long career, have you had like some awesome like success stories that put a smile on your face, and overall everyone should know about them, that at least this can also be one of the cases? So
Yeah, it's tough. So I have had a lot of success stories, and because I'm 29 years and I've probably forgotten more success stories than I even remember after all these years. But a couple of things that stand out. I remember this was a co-op situation or new graduate hire, something like that. But it speaks to just what we talked about, like second candidate. So I know that with 29 years of technical recruitment experience and hiring or influencing thousands, if not maybe tens of thousands of hires, even in my brain, when I think, okay, there's 3 candidates going for final interviews, I think candidate number 1 is the one that we should hire. I am right less than 50% of the time as to who gets hired. And
less
I
than
just less than 50% of the time. So the one that I think we should hire is less than 50% of the time actually hired. And the other candidates get hired, they do great. So what do I know? Because there's something that I missed, and really they're all really good hires. They could all be really good. But I remember one time I was talking to a hiring manager, and they were really wowed by 1 out of 3 candidates. But I successfully, and I really felt for it at the time, I successfully influenced them not to hire their top pick, but their second to top pick. Because the second to top pick was so enthusiastic about working for this organization and this hiring manager, they were willing to do anything. And I said, you know what? Sometimes you got to hire for enthusiasm, not just skills. And the first candidate was like, very smart, but had other opportunities on the go and was negotiating salary over and over again. And like, what about this? What about that? Well, how many years until this happens? I mean, the other candidate was like, listen, get me in. I love this place. I don't care what the salary is. And they were really close in terms of their technical capabilities assessed by the hiring manager. Like, why wouldn't you want the one that, like, love the one that loves you back? This other person is probably going to bail on us in 6 months. And we had pretty heated conversation about it. And eventually they said, okay, fine. Okay, we'll do it your way. And like months went by and on, and I'm so glad you talked me into that. This person is great. They become like a friend. The department loves this person. Their work, I can't even think of any candidate could do better work than they're doing. And if it is, it can't be that much better. And they really learned something about that, hire for that enthusiasm. So I thought that was a big success story, because that shows that even because the one candidate had experience because they happened to be going to an organization that had something. And I'm like, well, the other candidate just never had the chance. We're going to give them the chance, and they want. So that's important, and that's a learning from the hiring manager and a learning from me as well, as to when to go to bat and when to just shut up. Because half the time, like, just hire 1 of the 3. It doesn't matter to me.
okay.
I've done my job. They're all great. They're all going to help you. Pick one.
Hire the one with the most heart.
Well, I think that helps, that enthusiasm, because, and there's a really good, you can look it up on YouTube or somewhere. They talk about Navy SEALs or like special forces, and they ask them, who do you want to be on your team? And it's not the one that is the strongest and has the highest technical capabilities. It's the one that's going to, run through danger with you and be there.
Yeah, who's willing to die just to save you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the one that you're actually going to successfully complete the mission. The one that are technically really strong, that might not mean a successful completed mission. There could be a lot of injuries. So
Exactly.
similarly, like you want people around you that they don't have to be perfect, but they have to keep coming back and keep trying. So
Good
that
to
was
know.
that
And
was one that really stuck out that had to do with, what we were talking about.
yeah, I hope that person listens to this and wherever he or she is.
Yeah,
It's
and I
good.
think there's lots of people like that because I say that I use that example all the time. Like, who is the one that seemed most enthusiastic that's going to stick with us? It's going to have a bad day and not worry about how they gave up $5,000 a year. They're going to have a bad day and figure out how to come back tomorrow stronger. Right? This enthusiastic person is probably more likely to do that. They really want to be here.
Exactly. So some really good advice. Now, how should candidates be researching the company that they're applying for? Many times we see, especially if it's established name like Apple or Cineplex or anyone that everyone knows what they do. It makes sense. But if I'm applying for a smaller company, what should and especially from hiring manager or recruiter's point of view, do they really care if the
Yeah.
person?
I think it's not as important as what it used to be. Yeah,
Okay.
I really do. And when candidates come in and they sort of tell me more about the company than I know, then I think, well, they had so much time that they could research it that much. That's a lot of extra time on your hands. Like, how are you not that busy? So new
Okay.
graduates do that all the time. But part of me gets annoyed too because I'm like, listen, like I didn't ask you to tell me about my own organization. I know about my organization. Yes, check mark. You proved to me that you did your research. Get the check and get on to the next question. So some people can over prepare. Just know the basics, right? Like, okay, know who the hiring manager's name is and know, okay. And I find it easier. I prefer not to prepare, but I ask. I'm like, oh no, I know a little bit of your organization, but can you tell me how big is the department? What's your tech stack? What's your whatever? Just ask the question, have a conversation, as opposed to trying to prove to them that I'm so smart that I figured it all out before the interview.
Yeah, I had that experience once. Somebody knew that I was going to be interviewing them based on the email they sent. They went through my entire LinkedIn and then they started reading them. I felt creeped out. That
It's a bit creepy, isn't it?
yeah,
Like, oh, Barb,
exactly.
I see you're at ABC companies. You know Bob and this and that. I remember when this happened, that happened. 15 minutes later, like, can we get on with the interview here? Like, I need to ask you some questions.
So know
So I
about
think
them, but
that really don't get too caught. Like if someone says, "Oh, did you hear what happened to us?" Like it was splashed over the news, you have no idea. So just do a little bit like a rudimentary search and hold it there in case you need it. Don't lead with that. Hey, can I tell you what you know about your organization? No, I never asked you the question. I don't have time for this. Tell me what you know about C#. That's what I want to know.
Okay, perfect. Now, how do you think AI is influencing job application process and overall hiring? I see a lot of instances of people sort of cheating as well because it's
Uh,
blatantly easy.
yeah, significant influence. And I'm not sure what the answer is because it's still ongoing. So we started to detect this a couple of years ago where I remember we had a team meeting and I said, have you guys noticed how everybody's cover page looks the same and is polished and nice? Like, what's going on? Are these people living in the same house and they're just regurgitating? And then we realized, oh, they're using AI. And then when I talked to them, their communication skills are terrible. Oh, now I see what's going on. So I had to alert my colleagues, like, okay, if you're feeling weird because you feel like, didn't I just read this resume? Didn't I just read this cover page like 5 minutes ago? You probably did. It's just AI generating it. So we've started to detect that, and what do we do about it? We're not sure yet. People running AI in the background. So sometimes I can see off the reflection of their glasses that they got some other things answering questions. So now we're starting to say, you know what, you're going to come in for a live interview. No more video stuff. But why are you always pausing a couple seconds after I ask you a question? Oh, sorry, there's a gap in the audio. No, there's not. You're waiting for the AI to spit out the answer.
This is not
It could
you.
be like
You
another
are not
person
talking.
standing.
Exactly.
And now it's just something running in the background. And it's something we got to deal with. Because I have another customer and she says, ChatGPT is open on all of my screens in all of my department and mine too. Like, yeah, use it. It's a tool. So we want people to use whatever tool it is. And back in the day, it was like, oh, I didn't know how to run this script. You look it up.
You
Now you run the
you
script and
Google
now
it,
you
right?
know it. But fine.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
don't.
Everyone is pro AI when it comes to learning and doing stuff. But when it comes to like, I have never worked on this technology and I'm going to prove in the interview that
Keep my
I
way
know
through
about
it.
it, then faking it till you make it. So
That's right. Yeah. So it is causing a problem. And I frankly think that I'm hoping AI puts pressure on my job. Like, do I need to tell the hiring manager all these things? At some point, AI should be able to do that. But will it be accepted by AI better than it's accepted by me? Maybe that's going to take a while. But if AI gets good, then I'll say, listen, like maybe my job becomes obsolete. It can read resumes faster than I can, hopefully.
yeah, I think ATS is a form of it. So
It is, yeah. And we
yeah,
used to call it just an algorithm, but the algorithm was so poor, I wouldn't say it's actual intelligence. It's just, doing what it's supposed to do, and it can lead to a lot of missed situations where a great candidate gets overlooked. That's where I think my strength is. Like I can pick out a great candidate that no one else can see, almost like Moneyball. Like I see something that no one else sees, and I can get them for a cheaper price and a better commitment or whatever it is. But it's
exactly.
going to change. It's going to change. And no matter what you think about it, it's coming. It's here, and it's not going to be stopped.
Just one last question.
Okay.
So if you have to just advise someone, maybe your nephew, your son, anyone who is just starting their career based on everything you know, like how they can not only make successful career out of it and get their first job and next job and do this and that, but overall how to have like better, more fulfilled experience with what they want to get out of their career. Like what would you suggest that?
Yeah, so a couple of things are your question. So in terms of fulfillment, I think you need to set your expectations realistically. Set the bar low, right? Like you've got it because I've had people saying, "Oh, I got a job, I don't like it." And well, many people would. There's a lineup that would take you out for your job. Like they would
Yeah,
love to be in the situation you're in. So don't forget to look back and say, "Well, actually, I'm doing pretty well," and then look for opportunities to improve. And sometimes it's just like try and get 1% better today than tomorrow. And if you fail, that's okay. Don't beat yourself up about it. Just try and come back the next day a little bit better. Right. And so always look for those opportunities, whether it be through networking or through your own job. Like you can go pretty far in your own job if you just learn and grow. Right. You just have to be disciplined doing it. And then you've got to repeat. So it becomes muscle memory. Like just every day you get up, you show up, and you work. And
exactly.
there's where the value is. Like if you're not fulfilled, you're not supposed to be. You're getting paid money for your job. They're not paying you so you can be fulfilled. They're paying you to solve the business problem. Don't forget that. You're there to solve some problem. If there's no problem, then you're not needed. So be happy that there's some problems to be solved. Otherwise, you are redundant. Don't get up thinking, "Oh, my job's a curse." Your job's a blessing. You are not guaranteed anything. And it was trillions to one that we're even alive on this planet in this giant universe in the first place. You've already beat astronomical odds. Don't throw it all away.
When you put things on that perspective, we are just a pale blue dot. That's what Voyager would call us. So that's true. The odds are heavily stacked against us, and still we are just living this. So
We're here, and we're the envy. Like we happen to be in Canada, and we're the envy of billions of people. So take what you've got and just improve on it. And keep going and you don't even need to look back every day, but one day you look back and like, wow, I came really far. And take satisfaction out of the simple things in life. Because sometimes people get in their own head, like, oh, I'm not fulfilled and I'm not this and whatever. Job doesn't pay enough, but your job does pay. And you're working in the field that you wanted to work in, and you have opportunities. But if you put yourself in a real negative mindset, you're not going to take advantage of those opportunities. And it's going to slow your growth. All right. Pat yourself on the back when you need to. Reward yourself when you need to. But reward yourself and just know, like, these are simple things. You don't need to, you're not going to be the president tomorrow. You're not going to be given a Nobel Prize, probably. Work towards it. And if you don't get it, that's okay too. You're still better off than you were the day before. So
exactly.
I would give that because I think a lot of new graduates that their psyche is very delicate.
Yeah,
They
They
get
feel like,
frustrated
why?
easily, and something goes wrong, and there's tears, and I don't want to do this, and they give me something else. No, you just power through it.
Yeah, that's how you learn. That's how you become a stronger, more resilient person.
Right.
So exactly. So I genuinely appreciate Anand for doing this. It's been a pleasure. Like
Yeah.
I
Thank you,
learned,
Parth.
yeah, I learned a lot from your conversation. Things that I should be incorporating. So